When one man saved a wolf and her cubs, he never expected what would happen 4 years later. Wolves are a top predator. They are vicious, clever, and fast. But even they need a helping hand every now and then. This story took place deep in the Alaskan wilderness. One sunny spring day, a prospector named John was looking for gold along Kovo Creek on the southeastern side of Alaska's Caprino Island. As soon as he emerged from the forest that inhabited the island, he suddenly froze. No more than 20 feet away from him, standing in a bog, was a huge Alaskan timber wolf. It had gotten caught in a trap, one that John knew belonged to one of his hunter friends, George. Had John not been out that day, the wolf surely would have perished, as George had died the previous week from a heart attack. John started to approach the wolf, hoping to help it. Confused and scared at the approach, the wolf backed away, straining at the chain of the trap as it tried to pull itself free. That was when John noticed something very important. The wolf was a female, and her teats were full of milk. This meant that somewhere on the island, there was a den full of hungry pups just waiting for their mother. John stopped in his tracks, hoping not to frighten the mama wolf further. He took a good look at the wolf and guessed she hadn't been trapped long, maybe only a few days. That was a good sign, as it meant her pups were probably still alive. With young ones to care for, the female wolf wouldn't have strayed far from the den, so her cubs wouldn't be more than a few miles away. But now John had a problem. He needed to free the female canine so she could return to her pups. However, John worried that if he set her free, the wolf might turn aggressive and try to tear him apart in an effort to protect her babies. Fearful for his life, John came up with another plan that he hoped would work. He decided to search for her cubs so he could bring them to their mother. He began to look for any tracks or signs of where the mother had come from. He eventually found a few remaining prints in patches of snow around the edge of the bog. The prospector followed the tracks, which led him half a mile through the forest and then up a rocky slope. Finally, at the base of an enormous spruce, John saw the wolf's den. He cautiously approached the den, not wanting to scare the already shy and cautious pups away. He knew getting them out of their den would be tricky enough. The den was silent, giving no indication if the cubs were still there, but John had to try. To get their attention, he began imitating the call of their mother, a high-pitched squeak. Still, there was no sound or movement from the den. John didn't give up and repeated the calls. This time, 4 tiny pups appeared at the mouth of the cave. They slowly walked up to John and began suckling at his fingers. They couldn't have been more than a few weeks old and were obviously starving. One by one, John picked up the pups and placed them in his burlap bag. With the baby wolves securely in his bag, John turned around and headed back down the slope towards their mother. Upon returning to the trapped mama wolf, she quickly stood to attention when she noticed John approaching. She let out a high-pitched whine, as if she knew the man had her babies. John released the pups from his bag, and within moments, they were all suckling at their mother's belly. Even though the pups were fed and well, John still didn't know how to free the female wolf. Every time he tried to get close to the family, the mama would growl and warn him to stay back. Resigned that he couldn't free her straight away, John went in search of food for the mama wolf to keep her strength up. He came across the leg of a deer carcass and cut off a hindquarter. John knew that if he was going to free the trapped animal, he would have to gain her trust, and food was the best way to do this. John made a rough shelter near the wolf family and soon fell asleep. The next morning, he was awoken by 4 fluffy bundles of fur sniffing his face. It seemed he had earned the wolf pup's trust, but still had work to do with their mother. Over the next few days, John split his time between prospecting and trying to help the trapped canine. He would throw her venison and play with her babies, hoping to show he was not a threat. Each time John interacted with the animals, he edged closer to the trap. On the evening of the 5th day, John noticed something encouraging. The wolf wagged her tail slightly. Delighted that it looked like the animal finally trusted him, John sat only 8 feet away from her, so close that if she had wanted to, the wolf could have snapped his arm with her jaws. The man drifted to sleep surrounded by the wolf family. The next day, John awoke to the sound of the pups nursing. He carefully petted them, greeting them, and to his surprise, the mother wolf didn't growl or move. Taking this as a good sign, John put his hand on the wolf's trapped leg. She flinched, but didn't stop him. Finally, after days of trying to gain her trust, all of John's efforts were paying off. He examined the steel trap and saw that its jaws had only caught 2 of the wolf's toes. They were swollen and cut, but she wouldn't lose the paw, which was more than John had hoped for. He found the release catch and quickly pressed down on it. Now free, John expected the mama wolf to gather her pups and disappear into the woods. But she did something that shocked him. The wolf slowly crept up to the man and began to lick his hands and fingers. John was astonished. It went against all his knowledge about wolves, but he was more than happy to let it happen. After a while, the mother decided she was ready to leave. She gathered her pups and walked towards the forest. Before disappearing completely, she turned back to John, as if asking him to follow. John understood, gathered his belongings, and followed her. They eventually ended up at Kupernuff Mountain and came upon an alpine meadow. At the edge of the meadow, lurking in the shadows, was a wolf pack of around 9 adults and 4 nearly full-grown pups. The mama wolf and her cubs approached the pack, and after a few minutes of greeting, the entire family broke into howling. John watched from a distance, amazed. As night fell, John set up his camp. By the light of his fire, he could see multiple wolf shapes darting in and out of the shadows, but he wasn't scared. He knew they were simply curious about him. As dawn broke, John knew it was time to leave. He gathered his things while the mama wolf watched. As he reached the far side of the meadow, John looked back one last time. The mama wolf and her pups were sitting where he had left them, watching him. John waved his final goodbye, to which the mother wolf let out a mournful howl. He then turned and descended the mountain, never expecting what would happen next. 4 years after this encounter with the wolves, John returned to Coho Creek after serving in World War II. As he walked through the familiar woods, something caught his eye. The rusted steel trap he had saved the mama wolf from all those years ago. Seeing the trap, John suddenly had a strange feeling, as if something was telling him to return to the meadow where he had last said goodbye to the wolf family. Following his instincts, John climbed the mountain until he reached the meadow. He let out a long, low wolf call, something he had done many times before. To his surprise, a howl responded. John called again, and once more a howl answered. Then he noticed a large, dark shape moving in his direction. As it crossed the meadow, John could see it was a timber wolf, but not just any wolf. It was the one he had saved. The wolf stopped just in front of John, her bushy tail wagging slightly. Then, as quickly as she had appeared, she disappeared into the woods again. John left the island not long after, and while he never saw the wolf again, the memory of her and her pups stayed with him for the rest of his life. Whether this story is true or not is unknown, but the magical experience of sharing a special bond with another animal is one many of us can relate to because of our own pets. What would you do if you came across a wolf in need? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for daily inspiring videos. See you next time for more amazing stories.